Live from Denver's Cherry Creek neighborhood, you are watching the Kyle Malnati podcast. I'm your host, Kyle Malnati, and I'm sitting here with Daren Schmidt of Allante Properties. Daren, thank you so much for joining us on the show today. This is the show where multifamily matters, and Daren, is a multifamily developer. Daren's been in the real estate business basically since he could walk. His dad was a home builder here in Colorado, and all kidding aside, Daren is a savvy multifamily investor as well as syndicator here in Colorado. Daren, what's your real estate story? How did you get started in both the multifamily business and just kind of what's your introduction to real estate?
Yes, so it started very young, 4 years old, when I sat up in bed and lectured my father on what he should do and why he should do it. But with that said, it really has been fortunate because I grew up in a real estate family. So I always would get to talk with Dad and hear his stories, and it was a passion of mine. I don't know why, but it just became natural for me, and I loved everything around construction. I loved everything about development. I loved everything about the financing. So primarily through my father, and then obviously being in the world, I knew a lot of people that developed as well. So that was the start.
And you spent some time away from Colorado, right? At the beginning of your career, at least.
Yeah, so I graduated from CU Boulder with a degree in philosophy. I also studied real estate at DU, and I developed land down in Houston for my father. So I actually worked for him for about 6 years.
Cool, very good. And today is September 11th. The intro music that we had, Ray Charles singing "America the Beautiful," has some intentionality there. Obviously, we're thinking about the fact that 14 years ago, and I think about you talking about college, but 14 years ago, September 11th, 2001, the World Trade Center, the Pentagon, just this craziness that happened in our world. And I think about that. I was a sophomore in college. My wife and I were about to get ready to go to class, and just thinking about college, as you bring that up, just really kind of bring some chills to my spine as we talk about that. And I think when you have experiences like that in life, one of the things I like to think about is, how families really hold together in times like that. And for you speak very fondly of your dad. And what type of relationship do you have with your father, and what type of intentional guidance has he given to you as you become a real estate developer?
So I have a tremendous relationship with my father. I think we have like one tiff per year at most, and it's when we disagree on something foolish.
And he's always right?
Yeah, he's almost always right. He's listening to me more and more these days. But to answer your intentionality, my father's an entrepreneur. He's very intentional in everything that he does. He loves thinking about ideas, loves sharing them, and from a young age, we had multiple conversations, almost on a weekly basis, about what he was doing. I would ask questions. He would give me, very quick answers to them. And it was interesting because he spent a lot of time making sure that I understood things and that I was able to basically come up with the questions for myself. And then it was day in and day out. I mean, we jokingly say that our wives hate us because we talk about real estate all the time, but it's a passion, it's a love, and it's something that I can't not talk about. So it's kind of always there, always present.
I'm doing a lot of different work around the concept of family legacy and understanding how fathers pass on to their kids, or even mothers pass on to their kids, this family legacy. So I think that intentionality of, hey, this is what we talk about around the dinner table. If you own a restaurant, the restaurant's going to be a big part of your business. If you own, or a big part of your family interaction, and if you own real estate, it's going to be the same way. And I think when folks are entrepreneurs, it really is it's in their blood, and they really do everything they do. It's so apparent that that's their craft, that's what their calling is. And I think that's what makes an entrepreneur very good at what they do, is that inherent passion. And so I think I'm thrilled to hear that, because I look forward to doing that for my kids. And being able to pass that on to the next generation, that idea of real estate being a wonderful thing and something that you can really get your hands into, and it's tangible, and it's fun to look at. And when we were prepping for the interview, I remember you saying that your dad would take you on to job sites and kind of show you what was going on, and that stuff will stay with you forever.
Yeah, it really has. And the other thing that's been really cool is we created this thing called a Book of Truisms. So little things that he's learned in the past and I'm now learning. I literally have a Word document now that's got to be every bit of 20 pages long. You know, things to remember that when you're going through a project or whatever. So it's been
awesome.
Yeah,
I love
truism.
it.
I don't know if it's a word, but
no, but I mean it works for you guys, and that's
Yeah.
really cool to have something like that literally takes from one's experience and takes it to the next generation.
Yeah.
My next question for you is obviously what neighborhoods in Denver are you developing right now?
Yeah, so we're in the Highlands primarily. We owned a property in Fitzsimmons that was quite successful. We've just sold it, and then now in the Highlands finished a project up there. I absolutely love it. I mean, it's Denver's buzzword. Everybody wants to be either low, high, or Highlands. Now Uptown, Denver as a whole, but we like that. We have another project slated to go in the ground by the end of this year in the Highlands as well, kind of the Berkeley neighborhood off of Tennyson, and then another project in Uptown, and we love Slums Lake as well. So pretty much anything in those areas.
So our last month's guest was Josh Mullins from Larimar. You've met Josh,
yeah.
And Josh's question, he's hoping for a free lead. He wants to know what's the next Highlands or Rhino? What's that next emerging market in the Denver metro area or even within the city and county of Denver?
Yeah, so not to take away anything from the Highlands or Rhino, but I wholeheartedly believe in the Denver Design District. A new friend, but what I consider a good friend,
yeah.
is a development partner over there, Chris, and the landowners, and he have a tremendous vision for it. So I think with its proximity to DTC, a massive employment center within the city of Denver, and the light rail and everything there, and they've got I think close to 75 acres that can be developed over the next 20 to 30 years. So that's my next spot.
That'll be fascinating to see how that changes the fabric of the city, and that's the exciting thing about everything that's going on right now is we are in this growth period in Denver, and we're going to have some struggles. That always happens when you have these big growth periods, but it's exciting to be here in Denver.
Yeah.
What's your question for our next month's guest?
So it's a simple one. When does the market soften or plateau?
Okay.
And not necessarily why, but it'll be interesting to see what does shake out.
Yeah.
So the when and the why of when the market is going to soften, at least from the multifamily perspective.
So we're both millennials. We're actually the same age, graduated high school the same year from local schools here in Colorado. And as millennials, that's the big buzzword that everybody in real estate wants to talk about right now. As millennials, I think it's really important to look at that generation or the couple of generations before us. Mm-hmm. And what have you learned in working in real estate development from older generations? I'd imagine that you, on your job crews, whether it's the architects, the designers, the workers, there's a lot of folks from all across different generations.
Yeah, I always consider myself fortunate to do what I do, and in particular working with my father and the teams we put together, we're very selective in who we work with. The people that surround our projects are some of the best of the best. With that said, the older generation, i.e. the baby boomers, I've learned a lot from. So patience is their number one virtue, and it's been interesting to see that because I'm horribly impatient, as I think a lot of millennials for the tag word are. But patience and thoughtfulness in the way that they think through processes, and we're talking about doing $20 to $100 million projects, and there's a massive amount of parts that move around to it, but being able to take all those parts and put them into a cohesive work center is pretty impressive. So that I am tremendously astonished by, because again I have very little patience, and from the millennial perspective, I mean, yeah, it's a big buzzword. I don't think we're all that different from previous generations. There's a stigma that's attached to them, and I think we are coming into an age of tremendous amounts of information, so the rapidness that we see that information is very different than before. But the millennials, I think, are the underlying human factors that exist across everybody will continue to be there. They're gonna eventually have kids like you and I, move out of the apartments, buy a house because you don't want to rent for the rest of your life, and there will be some commonalities, but I look forward to seeing the innovations that come out of that generation.
Yeah, and you had mentioned this before when we were chatting, that baby boomers were largely misunderstood by a lot of the prior generations, and we've all seen that that's worked out fairly well, and each generation is going to have its own struggles, and we're going to have our own different things that we interact with. in history. But yeah, I agree with you. This apartment crowd that's then growing and coming of age are going to have kids, and they're going to be, that mindset, that information age mindset is going to permeate through our kids. And it's going to be interesting. It'll be fun to see.
Yeah, it's almost exciting for me to see it, because not knowing what it's going to be like in the next 10, 20 years is where we get to innovate as, the millennials, if you will.
That's right.
Yeah.
I'm a huge book nerd, as I like to say. I believe that leaders are readers, and the reason I say that is that folks that, whether it's in college or in high school, you feel like you've been delegated an assignment to read a book, but when you choose to read a good nonfiction book outside of school, you're really having some learning there, and it's intentional, and those are things that I'm all about. So what nonfiction book have you read that just totally made sense to you, and why was that an important book for you to read?
Yeah, so this was an easy one. It's called With No Fear of Failure, written by a guy by the name of Tom, I always mispronounce his name, Fajo, and he was the CEO and the creator of BFI, which was the largest waste company in the entire world. And I like it for two reasons. One, his goal was simple. He was a lawyer that bought a $500 trash truck, and he literally picked up trash before he went in to go work, with his law firm, and everybody thought he was nuts. But he said, I have a passion for it. I see a gap in the market where we can consolidate all these. And his goal was very simple, and then he said, I want to be the largest trash operator in the entire world. And he did that. I forget the exact period of time, probably in about a 20 to 25 year period.
Right.
The growth was tremendous. The market was poised for it. But I like it because it's simple. It's a very easy read. I read the book probably 10 times now, and I go back to it to just remember some of the things that he went through. And it wasn't always easy. There were times when it was very difficult, but there were also times when he, at the top of his game, got to say, I created the largest trash company in the world.
Yeah.
So, and it's trash,
Well, the parallel that I see there, which is so appropriate to real estate, is you've got a guy who's obviously intelligent.
Sure.
Intelligent enough to build a company of that size, but intelligent enough to go to law school, be a lawyer, and he says, I'm going to go be a trash guy. Yeah. I'm going to buy a $500 trash truck and bootstrap that and do it on my own. And real estate investors are like that. Mm-hmm. Most of the real estate investors I meet are not super flashy. You're wearing blue jeans. A lot of my clients have key rings that they look like they're wardens because they've got so many keys on it. And they work hard. They change out toilets. Wow. They're painting units on the 30th when someone's going to be moving in on the 1st, and they're sweating and they're making it happen. Yeah. And that's what I love about real estate is you get dirt underneath your nails. And I got my degree in finance, and finance, so many areas of finance seem so intangible and so unreachable, and you're like, what occurred to make that big change in the stock market? Real estate is tangible. You can work it, you can see it, you meet the people you rent to, and it's really a fascinating business because of that. So that's kind of that parallel that I see there, and I'm excited to read that book because if you've read it 10 times, I got to read it at least once.
Yeah, and it's a simple read. I don't read a lot of long books, but I read short articles and try to keep up on as much as possible. But yeah, it will stay with me for the rest of my life. So
there's someone out there that's an aspiring investor, someone that has maybe read a few books, watches podcasts or listens to podcasts. What would you give as far as advice to an aspiring investor, someone that's looking at making that first investment in real estate, whether it's a house, a 10 unit, whether they want to partner with someone as a syndicated investor? What advice would you give to them?
Yeah, I kind of look at it like a two-part question. The first one is, if you want to go buy a 2-unit or a 4-unit, I say go do it. Get your fingernails dirty and see what it takes to paint a house and to get the renters in there and do the leases and all that. That's a simplistic way of doing it. But then the second part is there's a lot of very, very good people out there that have done tremendous work in the last 30 years, and they have a lot of knowledge. I'm fortunate enough again to have my father to learn from, but then there's some guys around town here that either worked for a big, large corporation and went off and started their own thing because they kind of learned the process. So it's, two ends of the spectrum, the other end being go work for somebody or perhaps invest with somebody that's doing it right now, ask tons of questions and get a feel for it, because there's a lot of mistakes that can be made. It's by no means easy, but that would be the kind of two-part answer that I would give you.
Yeah, I love that advice because there's so many people out there that have done it before. Real estate's not new.
It's not.
You know, real estate's been developed for decades and centuries, and so the key theme that most of our guests answer that question, you hit right on it, is the team around you. You don't have to figure this out all on your own. There's so many people out there that will give you free advice. Like watching this show, there's real estate brokers that love to just talk about the market. There's in development, there's architects and designers and other developers that maybe aren't competing with you that say, hey, look, this is what worked for us. You've got folks in other cities that might be like Denver that say, hey, this is what's going on here in Austin or Nashville or wherever it may be a similar type of city. And so I think for those who are trying to do something, you know, do more research than you think. If you think you need to do 3 months or 4 months of research, double that. And really dig into what your subject matter is. One of my professors in college said before you invest $1 in the stock market, you should spend 6 months pretending that you've bought the stocks that you buy and see that, track it, and understand, you know, how the market flows. And I think a lot of people we're impulsive. We want to get right in there, and you want to make change. You want to make it happen right away.
I'm going to say one more thing about it. I would plug the ULI, so Urban Land Institute. A tremendous organization. Be involved with that, and then surround yourself with the best of the best. I mean, at the end of the day, that's what has worked well for me, and it's the way that I would recommend somebody go into the market.
Daren picked a quote by the President Theodore Roosevelt. And I love this quote because it's got multiple themes that are appropriate for our show. The quote goes, "There has never yet been a man in our history who led a life of ease, whose name is worth remembering." Again, that was by President Teddy Roosevelt, and on September 11th, 2001, obviously remembering our fallen citizens of America, the first responders who helped save anybody that was in the World Trade Center attacks. And then also just living a life, choosing to live a life that's worth remembering. I get a gift for all of my guests, and you're no different. I got the book Entre Leadership by Dave Ramsey. Dave Ramsey is my favorite author, and Daren mentioned he's not a huge fan of reading big, long books. It seems big, but it's broken up into very tactical steps on how you build a business. And I think it's one of the best business books for entrepreneurs. For Daren Schmidt, I'm Kyle Malnati. Thanks again for everybody that watches our podcast. As I love to say, we'll see you around the neighborhood.